Well, hi everyone. We're so excited to be here today to talk about Springtide and our upcoming research in politics. And it's just going to be a conversation today about why we're researching, what we're researching, how we're doing it. And I'm super excited to be here with the rest of the research team. My name is Dr. Kari Koshiol, and I'm here with Dr. Nabil Tueme, Dr. Hannah Evans, and Jaclyn Doherty to discuss just all things Springtide as related to the research we're doing this year. So hi, everyone from the research team. Thank you for coming.
Hello, excited to talk about this with you all.
Yeah, so I guess the first question that I think everybody wants to know, and I'm excited to hear all your responses on, is why did Springtide elect to study politics in 2024?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we were really expecting to hear a lot about politics just in the general discourse, given the general election coming up in November. So we thought that, doing this research now is really timely because we'd be able to contribute young people's voices to that discourse. They're not voices that we typically hear, especially when it comes to things like politics and like broader impact on society. So we thought it was really important and valuable to do this research and contribute young people's voices to the politics that are happening this year.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them, right?
And I think even for the younger folks, right, who aren't old enough to vote yet, they're still shaping their communities in really key ways. And they are thinking about these things, and they are attuned to the social and political issues that we're thinking about today. So being able to actually talk to them, hear from them, and think about how they're defining political engagement and how they're doing it, I think is going to be really interesting.
For sure. Are there any like topics on politics, or not on politics specifically, but on the study of politics or this particular study that are really interesting to you all personally, I guess as a researcher or just as a human?
A lot of studies of politics are very like big picture polls, like large scale surveys, and we do have that as a component of the study. But I love that we're also pairing it with like interviews of young people. I think that it really complicates the narratives of like political party and political leanings. Like I haven't interviewed anyone that I feel like really neatly fits into like conservative or progressive. Like everyone is so multifaceted, and I think that gets lost in a lot of the ways that we measure politics in the United States. And so I'm excited to be able to bring back some of that complexity as it relates to young people and what they value, and then also how their relationships are impacted by political issues.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I also think like, young people, like Nabil was saying, young people's engagement in politics is something that we're interested in. I've been hearing from adults kind of a lot lately that they're not sure what type of engagement young people are doing and whether they're doing it at all. So I think that through the survey work and through the interview work, we'll really be able to get a better understanding of, what's important to them and what, the ways in which they're engaging in politics, and just in their communities as well.
Well, for me, the other part that's interesting about this is when and why young people choose to share their political lives with adults. What do young people look for when they're thinking about sharing these things? What are some of the kind of key characteristics of trusted adults that signal to young people, okay, yeah, we can actually have a dialogue here? Or, on the other end of things, like, you know what? I know this conversation isn't going to go anywhere, or XYZ is going to happen, and so I'm going to kind of opt out of that at the outset. So really understanding what those conversations look like, what young people hope they look like, because we might expect that it's okay, maybe they're looking for a lack of disagreement, and I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's okay to disagree, but how you disagree, how you engage with young people, how you show them that you're really listening, is going to be a really kind of key part of this that I'm really interested to find more about.
I love hearing all you mention all the different pieces of what you're interested in learning. I guess one other thing that might be really interesting to discuss is how we're going about learning it. I know, Hannah, you mentioned the survey and the interviews. I guess I mean, those are hard things to conduct and hard to do. And so I'm wondering if you all could talk a little bit about what are the challenges with surveying young people and also interviewing young people.
Well, it's like you said, Kari, really important for us to get these things right. How we create the survey that we give to young people, how we create the interview guide, right? The interview questions that we ask of young people. That's one of the most important pieces of this. And it's hard to measure sometimes what we really intend to measure. And by that, I mean that, we want to try to construct these survey questions and interview questions in a way that really truly correspond to the real properties of the social phenomenon that we want to understand. So just to kind of give you an example here, if we wanted to measure how religious a young person is, but we only ask them about how often they're attending religious services, we would miss the diversity of ways that young people actually practice and live religion. And so we might therefore categorize that young person as not religious or slightly religious when they themselves might say, I'm actually really religious, right? And so the way that translates to studying politics is that we don't simply want to ask young people, like, do you align with a particular political party? And if so, what is that party? Right? But we actually want to get down into, what does it mean to say that you align with this party? What parts of this party do you like? What parts of it don't you like? What do you actually care about? And for me, one of the most fun questions, the one that I think really promises to yield a lot of interesting insights, is this question we have about if you were to create your own political party, right? What would that, a political party that really truly represented you, what would that look like? What would this party stand for? What would they do? And starting to hear young people's answers to that question has been really enlightening and also just kind of fun.
Agreed. I was wondering if there's anything any of you can talk to about, I mean, politics are hard. I mean, everything you said, Nabil, is true, but politics are hard to research from the perspective of we live in a pretty divided society right now, right? So there's this, how is Springtide making sure that you're hearing voices from across that political spectrum?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we did on the survey side was really really think about our own biases going into it. So, whenever you do research, regardless about what you're studying, there's going to be some bias. So it's really about checking that and about, thinking about different perspectives that these young people might have and bringing in other voices and other people that might be able to provide, perspectives on that as well. So, whenever we do a survey for the state of religion, including for this year's state of religion, we put together the questions, but then we have it go through rounds and rounds of reviews with a lot of different people. So of course, everyone on this research team sees it. But then, we also try to get folks in this case from different political ideologies and from different religions to try to make sure that we are kind of tapping into things that we might not think about or things that we might not expect. So that is one way, at least on the survey end, that we are really trying to construct the instruments in a way that is as inclusive as possible across the political spectrum.
I'm really glad you brought that up, Jaclyn, because the second Kari mentioned that question, I just got so excited thinking about all of the different things we did in order to really try to capture a diversity of perspectives to inform just the way we were asking the questions, right? I was talking a little bit earlier about how the way that you ask questions can really shape the conclusions that you draw. But another thing that we did that I think is really important here is we're really trying to capture a diversity of young people from across the country. In the surveys, we're making sure that the broader characteristics of the United States are represented in the smaller sample of young people that we're surveying, right? So we surveyed around 7,000 young people. And we try to get that sample to look like the broader population in terms of things like region and gender and race. But we're also doing that in the interview sample. And so we've really sought to get young people from different parts of the country, from different socioeconomic statuses, from different races and religious traditions, but also no religious traditions, right? And political ideologies, to really make sure that we're representing the diversity of young people in this country. Young people are not a monolith, and I think sometimes there's a tendency to be like, oh, young people these days, this XYZ. But when you really break it down and see for whom those kinds of assumptions apply, you start to see that it's really hard to just kind of make generalizable statements like that. So doing things like this, I mean, like Jaclyn said, we're humans. We're gonna introduce bias into the research we do, but hopefully this mitigates that a little bit. And another big hope is that the conclusions we draw from the 7,000 young people we survey and the 100-ish young people that we interview can be generalizable to the broader public, can be applicable to young people across the country outside of the sample that we collect.
Thanks, Nabil and Jaclyn. It's so good to hear about how we are putting together instruments that really respect the voices of young people and help get them to share with us at a level that's really true for them, right? That's one of the pieces that I'm taking away from this. So then let's talk a little bit about what we're going to do with this data. We've made these great instruments. We're in the process of collecting data right now. How do you hope that this study will contribute to the national conversation in politics this year?
A lot of studies like this focus on 18-year-olds, like after you can vote. And I think one of the really unique things about what we're doing is that we're also interviewing 13 and 14 and all the way up from 13 to 25. And I think that that offers like a really unique perspective on how politics are shaping young people in the United States. Because there is so much more than just voting. Like, yes, young people talk about voting, but they also talk about like social media activism and protests and conversations with their friends. And it's not only once you vote that politics shape your life. It's it's high school. It's like it's all of these other formative experiences. And a lot of them figure out what they value most politically during those like high school and early college years. And so getting to see them at different stages in that journey, I think is really unique. And I'm excited to have that contribute to how we understand adolescence and early adulthood and how it is in conversation with politics in America.
For sure. Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned those 13-year-olds. I did an interview with a 13-year-old recently, and it's so good to know that Springtide's out there talking to all ages of young people because their voices matter too. I guess I'd also love to hear why you think it's important that we have this research-based offering to bring to the table this, to this conversation, especially in today's climate.
Well, that's a good question, Kari. I think during a presidential election year, there are a lot of folks trying to understand and sometimes even to predict how things in the political sphere will turn out. And with young people especially, I had mentioned this earlier, but I think there can be a lot of assumptions that are made about what young people hope, what they fear, and what they're going to do about that. And so what I hope with this study is that people will actually get to hear from young people in their own words about what truly matters to them. And so in that way, I think, we can check some of those assumptions and we can kind of empower people to contribute to the public dialogue in a way that's rooted in empirical reality. So things, I hear things, you mentioned today's political climate, right? I hear things like, we're so polarized, we're so this, young people are this, like all of these assumptions about how young people identify, how they're interacting with other people who differ from them. And so hopefully this will get people an opportunity to really kind of peer into the reality of what that looks like and see which one of those assumptions hold up. if any,
And I think another thing, and this is something we've been hearing from young people so far, but also is just a reality, is that they are the future of this country. So like the decisions that we're making now and the things that are happening in politics now is shaping what their future looks like. But they are also the future. So these people, the younger people, like there's obviously the high schoolers, which are coming up into adulthood, and then folks in early adulthood. They are the people that are going to be taking over, and these are, these upcoming perspectives and experiences are the ones that are going to be shaping what our nation looks like in the coming decades. So I think, being able to come at that early and trying to understand how young people are experiencing their lives and politics is a really interesting way to kind of look forward into
what our country will look like.
Yeah, for sure.
I have one more thought about the last question.
Perfect.
We hear a lot from adults about being concerned about how to engage young people around difficult conversations about certain political issues or about politics generally. And one of the things that I think is really unique about what we're doing is we're actually asking young people about what they want their conversations with adults in their lives to be like, what they're hoping for from those conversations about tough topics. And I think that can hopefully offer a lot of like clarity and direction to adults who want to care well for the young people in their lives and aren't necessarily sure how to bring up or go about having those conversations.
Yeah. Right. Well, then I totally look forward to all the wonderful conversations that the young people are going to be able to have with the adults who read our research. Because obviously, here at Springtide, we are listening today so that you can learn for tomorrow and you can better help the young people in your life. Thank you all so much, everyone. It was great to chat with you today, and we look forward to all the conversations in the future.